Good evening, Bulls fans. I'm Matt Gritzmacher. I'm joined by John McWhinney. We are from ubbullrun.com. You're probably watching it on our site. This is our weekly Bulls Banter. We call it Bulls Banter webcast. Every Sunday night, we talk about the week that was in UB athletics. During football and basketball seasons, this is an extra spot to highlight all the other sports. When those two sports aren't really in action, we'll talk about everything to make sure everybody gets talked about. In this week, we saw softball end their season today with a win on senior day. Baseball season is not over, but it's getting close. They also had senior day today. Track and field was back in action after kind of a lighter week off. Men's tennis found out who they're going to be playing in the NCAA tournament. Rowing was in action at the Eastern Sprints today, this weekend. We have some women's basketball news. There's a couple different things to talk about. One thing that was new in UB athletics this year, among a lot of things that are new this year, was today was, I believe, the first ever Blue and White Awards. It was a year-end awards ceremony for UB athletics, and thanks to the new partnership with ESPN3, UB was able to broadcast it. It was hyped as a pretty big to-do. John, I don't think attended in person, but John watched it and kind of covered it on Twitter. So once again, I'm joined by John McWhinney every week. John, what 3, 4, 5 minute rundown of the UB Blue and White Awards? What did you think of them? What were they cool? Who won things? What's exciting about them?
All right. I think the premise of it, it was a good idea. And it basically started off with Paul Peck going through, why we were here and talking about, how everyone from all the UB teams had done so well this past year and why they deserve to be recognized and yada, yada, yada. Then Danny White came out and said a few things that there were a few tidbits in there that were pretty important. And it was all about the department reaching department firsts. One of them being actually the first thing he mentioned was this semester was the this past semester was the sixth straight of a department-wide GPA of greater than 3.0. He also mentioned that this year we've doubled the number of MAC team championships, and we've also had 2 more NCAA tournament appearances in addition to the women's tennis appearance in 2008. And one thing that I thought was particularly interesting, because I didn't really think about this, but with the men's basketball going to the NCAA tournament this year, all of the media mentions, if you convert that into advertising dollars, all the media activity and coverage that UB got was worth in the range of about $20 million. Which for a department of UB size to get that type of exposure that's exactly what Danny White wants. Then they got into the awards. They did MVPs from each team, with all of them from this past year, with the exception of baseball, softball, and women's rowing and the track and field teams, because they're still competing now. So they decided to do it from last year, the people who competed for them last year. And there were a couple of other awards. Some of the big awards were obviously the male and female athlete of the year. No surprise, the male athlete of the year went to John Jones. And the athlete of the year, again, no surprise, went to Jackie Hall of women's soccer. There were a couple other awards. There's another one that Jackie Hall was awarded, was the Clifford C. Furness Award. And for those who don't know the history of UB, Clifford Furness he was the president of UB back, I believe, in the 60s, and is the namesake of Furness Hall, which is on campus. And he was, the building that's named after him is the Aerospace Engineering Building. So I have a little bit of a connection there. But that the award that Jackie Hall got, it's meant more for the scholar athletes who have a strong interest in going into graduate school, and she'll have a scholarship waiting for her when she's done at UB. If she decides to go to graduate school or pursue some other type of professional education. And to receive it, you have to have a minimum of a 3.5 GPA, among all these other things. And there were a couple other awards, which are called the Ideal Bull Awards. And those were given to the people who exemplify most what it means to be a UB Bull. If you think about all of the members of UB Athletics, and you think about if I could have one person and who I would want my entire team to be like, that's kind of the idea behind the award. And on the men's side, that went to, no surprise, Will Regan. He was known as a very vocal leader, and he was very supportive throughout his tenure here at UB. And on the women's side, Courtney Mann of women's soccer won it as well. And really, the women's soccer team cleaned house with all of the awards that were up for grabs. And then the last award of note was the Unsung Hero Award, and Sean Harvey of the track and field team was recognized for that.
Keep going.
Yeah, I think other than that, overall it was nice to see everyone get the recognition that they deserve. There were a few silly moments in there, as I think there was a very, 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 very obviously scripted appearance of the UB mop guy. And there were nice highlight reels of some of the best moments throughout this past year. Everything from Xavier Ford making some real highlight dunks to Colt Cotton penning this guy in his first match back from a gruesome knee injury, to Jackie Hall scoring, doing her thing and scoring goals. It was really nice. I know some people on Twitter complained about it, and really let the student athletes have their 15 minutes, let them be recognized. I thought overall it was really nice.
Yeah, good to hear. Many other schools do something similar for their student athletes. Very few other schools put it out on ESPN3 and broadcast it, but ESPN is they'll show whatever UB wants to show. So if UB wants to do a recruiting signing day thing, they can get it on ESPN3. If they want to put this on ESPN3, they can. Most schools do something like this, even just in-house. Long-time readers, even short-time readers know that I went to Boston College. They do something very similar. I was roommates with a couple of student athletes. This is just something that they do. It's nice. If it never becomes anything more than nice recognition for the student athletes by the student athletes, that's cool with me. I think it might be better served if it were just that. With that said, nice they did it. We'll move on to other things, I think. John, you were kind of cooped up all weekend, weren't you? You don't have much.
Yeah, if anyone does follow me on Twitter, I finished some brutal lab reports that I won't even really get into it. But
John and I keep a email thread going all the time, and we had talked about things. It's usually going every day. John published his Avengers Age of Ultron post on earlier this week, Tuesday or Wednesday, and I went and saw the movie, and I emailed him as soon as I got out, tell me when you've seen it. And I did not hear from John until like 4 p.m. today, like a full 24 hours after they sent that. So I figured John was pretty busy. Probably the most thing. Oh, do you have something, John?
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, this past weekend, I've been sitting in this exact position, and just my TV right behind, you can't see it, but it's right behind my computer. I've had the NFL draft on, and I think the most excitement Well, we'll get into it later, but
Okay.
go ahead.
I was going to talk about softball, but you remind me of the NFL draft, so I'm going to talk about softball, and then we'll go to Christian Sicoli. If you're watching this and you didn't know that Christian Sicoli got drafted, you're not allowed to be upset at us for spoiling that. Softball this weekend finished out their season. They went 2-2 in their 4 games, which is fine. It's better than they had done on the season as a whole. Those 4 games on Friday, they had a doubleheader against Northern Illinois. They gave up 4 runs in the first 2 innings of each of these games. And in the first one, that turned into a 7-0 loss. Kind of nothing went right. UB only had 3 hits. The second game, they scored 2 runs in the first and were able to claw back to get to 4-4. After those first 4 runs, all of which were unearned, I think. I think all 4 runs were scored thanks to 2 errors. 2 errors, a walk, 2 walks, a couple hits, but I think they were all unearned against Bobby Langlois. Bobby shut down Northern Illinois for the rest of the game, went to the bottom of the 7th, didn't get any scores, any runs. And extra innings, UB was able to hold Northern Illinois scoreless in the top of the 8th. Leading off the bottom of the 8th, Haley Barrow hit a walk-off home run. This is at home on Friday, and I think that was UB's 4th home game of the year. I think in 50 games they only got 6 home games, which we've talked about in the past. But that's a heck of a way to win a game. Against Western Michigan on Saturday, they fell down 3-0 early, got 5 runs in the 3rd inning to pull ahead, ended up losing 8-5, which is a bummer. But once again, they're a 500 weekend's good for them. Today is the day I really want to talk about, Senior Day. For all the exciting wins that UB's had this year, whether they've stayed close all game and managed to hold on, or it's been a high-scoring game and their offense has been able to keep up in the few wins that they've had, this was perhaps the easiest win of the year, the most boring, and that's probably the best way to have it. They won 5-0, took the lead, never looked back. Haley Barrow, again, on her senior day, pitched the whole game, only allowed 2 hits, 2 runs, 4 hits, and 6 strikeouts. Or excuse me, no runs, 2 hits, 4 walks, 6 strikeouts. There we go. Pitched the whole way. She's kind of been the third pitcher of UB's trio of pitchers this year, as they've tried to deal with losing Tori Speckman last year. And today on her senior day, she pitched probably, if not the best pitched game of the season, certainly the 2nd or 3rd after some of Langlois' performance. That's on senior weekend if we count today and the rest of the weekend. Haley Barrow had a walk-off home run and pitched her team to a win on their last game of the year. They will not qualify. They have not qualified. They're not going to the MAC tournament. So this is the end for that. In addition to Haley Barrow, other seniors, Samantha Buther, Carly Neves, Nora McGuire, and Alexis Curtis. For the most part, Buther and McGuire have kind of been role players, haven't gotten a lot of time in their careers. Carly Neves has been a starter, a heavy starter pretty much since she's shown up, but she also hasn't been an incredible player. She's been very good, and we're sad to see her go. But the star of this class is Alexis Curtis. I should let John talk in a minute, but Alexis Curtis now holds the UB record for hits in a career, doubles in a career, doubles in a season, and she might hold one more. I believe she leads the country in doubles per game this year. She finished with 22 or something like that. 22 doubles total, not 22 doubles per game. She stepped into the team after it lost a lot of offensive firepower last year. And she's always been very good, but this year she went nuts. She hit something like 439, I think, for the season. She just hit leadoff and just kept hitting. John, do you have anything to say about softball? I know you were cooped up.
I think you pretty much hit all of it. Another interesting little tidbit is that between Alexis Curtis, Carly Neves, and Nora McGuire, the 3 of them finished with 73 wins over their 4 years together, and that's the most of any class ever in program history, which I think that really speaks to the direction. Obviously, if you look at this year's record, it's not as good as it has been, but it's for me it signals that the program is taking the right steps and it's going in the right direction. I'm really happy that they won on senior day. Yeah, that's about it.
Okay, fair enough. Christian Sicoli. Tell me what you think about him. As I spilled the beans earlier, I hope I didn't spill the beans. I hope you guys all knew. Christian Sicoli, UB's nose tackle. Um, Everyone knows that he's Albanian. That seems to be his tag. Drafted by the Seattle Seahawks in the 6th round. That he was drafted, not a huge surprise to me, at least. I'm kind of an optimistic rainbow guy. Drafted by the Seahawks, I'm pretty excited about that. Other things, what else? I'm leaving some details out for you to fill in, John. But what do you have to say about Sicoli getting drafted?
Yeah, like you said, I wasn't too surprised about it. I think at some point somewhere along the line last year, I had said Sicoli was going to be drafted. I still have yet to find where that is, so I can brag and say, nah, I was right. But Christian is the 5th player in the last 6 years to be drafted out of UB. He's third. It's been the 3rd straight year from Stephen Means going to Tampa, then Khalil Mack last year, and now him. He was taken by the Seahawks, and they're basically going to do with him what they did with J.R. Sweezy a few years back, and that is they're going to switch him to the offensive line. And Sweezy was the same way. They drafted him out of North Carolina State, and he was on the defensive line, and he has a very similar body type to Sicoli, 6'5", around 300 pounds. And they flipped him over to guard, and he's started 34 of his 44 games in the league. He's won a Super Bowl as a starter. And don't be surprised if Christian Sicoli at some point this season or next season, if he is one of the starting guards on the Seattle Seahawks offensive line. He is an absolute freak of an athlete, and his production at UB doesn't really signal that, more because he played out of position as a zero technique nose tackle. He had more the body build and skill set of a defensive end, but he was kind of pigeonholed into the nose tackle spot, and he did well enough there to get noticed. And then from the pro day and at the Medal of Honor Bowl that he competed at, that's where the Seahawks first approached him about possibly playing guard in the NFL. And it shouldn't be that huge of a switch for him. I know in high school he played on the offensive line. So it's a matter of if he can leverage his athletic ability and his athletic prowess to make the best of switching back to the offensive line, because he really does have the perfect build to be a real road grading guard. And I'm a little upset that he went to my team's hated rival, the Seahawks, but I'll have to look past that until they play the Arizona Cardinals. But yeah, I think it's probably one of the best fits he could have had, even with the position change. He has a legitimate shot at seeing the field and possibly starting. Seattle's guards have been not so great outside of J.R. Sweezy. He's been serviceable, but outside of him, they've had injuries and people not playing well, and they're really looking for someone else to play opposite of Sweezy. And Sicoli fits that mold. Pete Carroll thinks he can do with Sicoli what he did with J.R. Sweezy, then absolutely Sicoli is going to be starting. He's going playing, and if history repeats itself, then he'll probably have a Super Bowl ring on his finger within a few years. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself there. But yeah,
Well,
I think overall it's a great fit. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I don't have much more to say on the fit. That's kind of your world. But I do want to talk more about this athletic freak. Everyone's hyping his athleticism, and I'll be honest, I didn't particularly see it while he was with UB. He led the team in passes defended this past year, which is pretty cool for any defensive lineman to do, let alone one right in the middle of the line. I don't follow the combine results enough to know just off the top of my head what's it, short of the 40, what a great number is. But his agent got very excited one day and tweeted out that his pro day numbers were huge, and other people reacted to that, and apparently they were very big. Apparently, the Seahawks have built a system that takes all these numbers from the different drills, maybe not all of them, but a chunk of them, and translates it into an athleticism score. And then what they do is compare people to the level of athleticism in their position group across the draft or across the NFL or whatever. And the guys on the Seahawks blog in SB Nation have been able to replicate this pretty well. They know the team uses it. At one point, it was more publicly available than it is now, and so they're pretty confident. And Sicoli's numbers were good enough that, anticipating he'd be moved to guard, you put his numbers, athleticism, compared to other guards, and he's 4 standards of deviation in terms of this fitness level. It's called SPARQ, SPARQ. I don't really know what it's all for. But they've got him at whatever his score is, it's 4 standard deviations above the average. And that's the first time that's ever happened among any selection within the draft or within the NFL since this guy's been following it, which is a couple of years. His name is Zach Whitman. The Seahawks blog is Field Goals, FIELDGULLS. They're super psyched about Sicoli. He ranks as the most, if you pencil him in as a guard by this system, he's the most physically above average player for his position group they've ever had in the system. They compare him to J.J. Watt. They compare him to Evan Mathis, which to me kind of seems ridiculous, but it might also speak to just how out of position he was at nose tackle. I don't have much more to say on that. I just wanted to talk about that's something I've learned since he's been drafted. The guys in Seattle, all the Seattle fans are incredibly excited for him.
Yeah, the SPARQ thing you talked about, it's a sports analytics. It's a fitness index, and SPARQ stands for speed, power, agility, reaction, and quickness. And basically what it is the raw numbers. So from like Sicoli's pro day, they took his vertical, his broad jump, his 40 time, and all these other things. And then there's mathematical formulae and stuff, and they crunch the numbers and whatnot.
Oh, you are frozen. Maybe you're frozen just for me. Maybe you're frozen for everybody. But I'll talk for a bit. I have little new to say on Sicoli. It is an analytics number. Seattle is goofy. They're very excited for him. The guys in this blog had been targeting him for a long time. They basically, from once pro day numbers came in, they were very excited about him. Oh, John, it looks like you might be
dead. There we go.
They were always targeting him. The blogs, at least, always were looking Sicoli in the 6th round, and that's where they ended up getting him. John, you were cut off in Spark Talk there.
All right. Yeah, where did I get cut out?
I don't know. You explained
Uh,
the acronym, or is it an acronym or is it a?
yes, it's an acronym. So NFL, a lot of NFL teams that you hear that have analytics departments. I believe the Buffalo Bills actually have one. The Jacksonville Jaguars do, and most teams now are getting to the whole analytics thing, and that's one of the things that they use. So if you put stock into that, then yeah, Sicoli's your guy, and he's the guy that you want.
Neat. Other than Sicoli, the senior parts of our graduated O line are all getting some looks. Not camp invites. Not excuse me, they are camp invites. They're not getting free agent contracts. But Trevor Sales to Cleveland, Jake Silas to Green Bay, and this afternoon Andre Davis to the Jets have all gotten mini camp invites, which is exciting. Teams are noticing them. I don't know really what their chances are. I'm not wildly excited. I mean, Byron Mulkey got a mini camp invite after his basketball career to play cornerback for the Bills. That's kind of the level. It's kind of a place for teams just to throw everything at the wall. I don't know, John. What do you think anything about mini camps that they could those guys show?
Um, well, if I think Sales is probably going to have the toughest time being in Cleveland, just because Alex Mack is a first team All Pro at center for the Browns, and they just drafted Cam Irving in the first round to either play guard or center. Mack's contract is up at the end of this year, so that's either foresight on their part, preparing for him to leave, or whatever. At any rate, this year, Sales would be the third string center, and teams rarely keep three centers on the roster at once. Andre Davis has a little bit better of a shot with the New York Jets just because the interior of their offensive line wasn't all that great last year. And Jake Silas with the Packers. I believe they re-signed Brian Bulaga there, and they have David Bakhtiari at left tackle. So maybe for I don't think their backups are anything really to write home about, so he could have a shot at maybe a backup spot there. But I don't think anyone else is going to be really competing for a starting job. It's more maybe like maybe a second, third string backup, or worst case is a practice squad for those type of guys.
I'm honestly hoping for practice squad. That at least keeps them on the NFL radar.
Mm-hmm.
Naaman Roosevelt turned on and off practice squad appearances into a 5-year career. Naaman Roosevelt's going to the CFL. That's really exciting. Maybe we'll talk about him today. Maybe we won't. But the Packers did re-sign Brian Bulaga, and one that makes me excited for James Starks, who is firmly entrenched, at least for one more year, as the Packers' backup. Packers didn't really draft anyone who should threaten that. He's set to make $1.8 million this year. It is a contract year for him, so hopefully he at least plays well enough that the Packers want to keep him as their backup. Maybe he plays well enough that someone else wants to pay him for a little bit longer than 2 years at a time. He's probably getting to the age where he wants to look for maybe a 3-year deal just to have security. One other NFL area I do want to talk about, though, is that the Chargers drafted Melvin Gordon, which not very happy about that. Others are more enthusiastic about Brandon Oliver's place on the Chargers than I am. I love Bowen, think he's great, and I think there's a place for him in the NFL. I think he's the odd man out in the Chargers as it stands right now. John, what do you think of that situation?
Well, for the Melvin Gordon pick I thought it was kind of stupid that the Chargers traded up to pick him, but that's kind of beyond the point. Where Oliver sits, I think he showed enough this past year that he deserves to be on the roster more than say I think who else is on the roster? Donald Brown, and I think Danny Woodhead is still on the roster.
Yep, it's Brown, Woodhead, and Gordon right now are the other 3 running backs.
Mm-hmm. I think I would think your starter would be Gordon. Obviously, they spent a top 15 pick on him. He's going to play. He's going to start. I would think that Oliver would probably be, a short yardage, maybe a change of pace type back. They even played him on special teams last year, returning kicks. So he could still play. There's always a place on special teams for guys who make an effort and want to play. So, and they know he can run and he can do good things too, just with the way he absolutely eviscerated the Jets last year. So I think I'm a little more optimistic that his roster spot is safe. Does he see as much playing time as he did last year? I don't think so, purely because Gordon was drafted in the first round, and they're going to want him on the field.
Yeah, I'm hopeful. It's hard for me to get excited about Oliver, his special teams abilities, because he's just small. I think there are a lot of teams that Bo could really succeed on. I think the Colts really need anybody in their running game, which is funny because they passed on him first. They had first dibs on him last year. I like Oliver in San Diego. I like all of UB's guys going west because there are always fewer 4 o'clock games, and so we're more likely to see them. Steven Means, all of 6 career tackles, actually looks to be in okay shape on the D-line in Baltimore, unless they picked a bunch of D-linemen in the later rounds, which I haven't looked up yet. I'd probably like to move on to the other UB sports, but Steven Means in Baltimore looks to be more secure than he has been in a while, strangely. Jake Shum is on a futures contract with the Jets. Jake Shum is one punter, and Ryan Quigley, who I watched play for 4 years at Boston College, is another punter on the Jets. So I'd like for both of them to show really well in preseason and then one of them to go to another team, both of them to be starters in the NFL. And then we'll see what comes of all these other guys. Adam Redden has really fallen off the map. I guess his pro day was really awful from what I read. Looks like he might not get a shot now. Naaman Roosevelt's in the CFL. Ernest Jackson is a star in the making in the CFL. Drew Willie's found a home in the CFL. These are things that we'll talk about more in the summer when we have less to talk about. Other sports in action this weekend: rowing, baseball, and track and field. I am prepared to talk about any of them, John. What are you prepared to talk about?
I guess we do baseball. They played. I do know that they played Kent today.
Yeah.
And yeah. It looked good. Through 7 innings, and then after that, not as much.
Yeah, it was great through 7 innings. They tied the game 2-2. Then they went up 4-2. Charlie Sobraski is a freshman from Lockport. He looks amazing. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Sobieraski. Sobiraski. I think Sobraski is close enough. He looks awesome. I dropped a really, really deep cut of a reference on Twitter, and nobody bid on it, so I don't know if anybody got it. But he today was 3 for 4 with an RBI and 3 runs. He's very, very good, and he's hitting out of the 7 spot this year. But Mike Kalin has kind of been – he was a lights-out closer last year, and this year he's been on and off. And today he was going for a 3-inning save, which is something that he's done made it through the seventh okay, gave up a 3-run homer to lose the lead in the eighth, and then gave up 8 runs in the ninth. And it looks like that ninth inning was just an absolute mess. It just did not go well at all. They ended up losing 13-7. Baseball, much like softball, has committed a lot of errors this year. Unlike softball, they haven't really cleaned it up as the season's gone on. Yesterday, they lost 10-2 to Kent. They did win one. Each time they faced the division leaders this year, they won the first one. On Friday, they won 9-3 against Kent, and the box score is broken, so I don't remember all that happened. Baseball. I don't think they're officially eliminated from the MAC tournament yet, but they basically need to win 5 out of the remaining 6 games in the MAC and get help. They have 2 weekends left. I don't know. There's been some cool things with baseball this year. There's Nixon A and couple younger guys who probably aren't good enough to get drafted and leave us early, but also are good enough to be the core of a maybe winning team next year. I don't know. I'm guessing. I'm leaving this open for you to say something if you want, John.
I'm hoping that there's a core in place for next season for the team to make a run or, to do something next season.
Yep.
I didn't get to watch the game today, as that's become abundantly clear. I apologize for that.
There's just not a lot to say. It's a program who's clearly shown. They've shown over the last few years what they can do with some success. And this has been a year that we always knew was going to be tough. And I think it's really important to find a core. I hope that to people who are watching more of the games than I'm able to, Matt Meyer, the director of softball operations, is able to do a live stream of most softball games. So I've seen more of them actually happen. Baseball, I haven't seen. They don't have any streams. They don't really have a great Twitter presence. And so it's tough other than just the live stats to see what's going on. But there's some highlights there. They've got 2 more games left against St. Bonaventure and 1 versus Niagara. Those are the last competitions of the year against Western New York rivals, which outside of baseball, UB has absolutely dominated all year round. I did a series of posts on those earlier in the year. I'll probably do another once it ends. That's baseball. Speaking of sports that we don't really know how to talk about right now, rowing. Rowing was in their last competition before the Colonial Athletic Conference Championships in 2 weeks. They were at the Eastern Sprints in New Jersey, which is one of the larger spring regattas of the year. Good news-ish is that all of UB's boats made it to the petite finals in their respective races. The petite final is not the actual final. It's kind of like the runner-up final. There's the prelims, and the top 8 teams or whatever make it to the grand final. And then the next 8 teams, numbers 9 through 16, make it to the petite final. I believe. It's been a while since I've really paid attention to rowing. Good news, to the extent that there is any that we can talk about with rowing, was that the Varsity 4B boat, so in the second tier of Varsity 4 races, they won their petite final, the second tier of final races within an age group. As I always say with rowing, I can tell you that they finished in 8 minutes and 33 seconds. I could go back in time and tell you how that compares to their other races this year, but everyone else also made the petite final, finishing between 3rd and 6th. That's a neat. Rowing is just about done for the season. They're rowing is in the Colonial Athletic Association, a different conference. They're the only UB team not in the MAC. It's the only sport that UB has that's not sponsored by the MAC. it's kind of been a downish season for rowing. A couple of years ago, they won a few Colonial Athletic Championships in a row. This year, I don't think they will. We'll talk more about them, and maybe I'll find ways to talk about them more in 2 weeks. That's rowing. We're always saving track and field for last.
Mm.
They did not set a school record this week. I'm heartbroken.
My God, that's the first time that's happened in months.
January 11th.
Yeah, so
was the day of the
crap.
Brooklyn or the Armory invite, whatever it was. Track and field is just going on. We should find the most recent rankings. The men's team had gotten to. This isn't what I want, but it's close to what I want. The men's team should still be ranked number 1 because they've competed against Cornell twice and done better than Cornell twice. The women's team had climbed as high as 6th. At this point, I don't really know. They're gearing up for the MAC championships. Let's see. Oh, no school records, but they set two facility records. Ryan Billion in the 200 and Kamari Long in the 200 both set new records at Cornell's facility, which the way this year started out against Cornell really sucked, and it's finishing pretty strong against Cornell. All the fall sports lost against Cornell, if you remember, and that really, except football, because football doesn't play Cornell. Now we beat Cornell. That's pretty swell. Let's see. Other things before I put John on the spot once again. Laurent Dewar and Austin Ashby in the high jump and the long jump hit MAC auto qualifiers. So that puts us at Mike Morgan and Laurent Dewar have definitely qualified for the MAC in the high jump, and Chris Reap should be there as well. In the long jump, that's Austin Ashby. And I don't know if Ryan Billion has actually qualified for the MAX in the long jump, but he's the reigning conference champion, so he should be. There should be 2 other MAC qualifiers. Tyra Forbes in the long jump on the women's side. And 100 hurdles, Caitlin Arcuri and Christine Little, who are always next to each other in the races. They hit it in the MAC qualifiers there. Regine Lazard, who I talked about last week, and the 400 hurdles has got her time down to 1 minute and 62 hundredths of a second. That's exciting. Oh, there were more MAC qualifiers, but John, let me now put you on the spot with track and field. What would you like to say?
Yeah, putting me on the spot again. I don't really have much to say about the Cornell invite other than I guess no school records really were set because it's kind of a tune-up for the MAC championships, and hope to see. So next time we meet, it'll be a few weeks before that happens.
Yeah.
Oh wow! I should be home from school when that wraps up. How about that?
Especially since we know we'll have representation at the national championships. That's
yeah. So I'll kind of segue right on out of that because I don't really know what to say.
It's not a day in either prepared Matt and John time, or there actually being a lot to talk about. But John was moving on to something, which I give him credit for because I had nothing else to.
Well, the one thing we didn't mention yet was Alexis Malone transferring to Louisiana Tech. The loss of Mackenzie Losang was bad enough and losing Malone to transfer,
Yeah.
it hurts even more.
Yep.
The optimistic side of me is hoping that the former, I think it was Big East Player of the Year that you had mentioned previously would still transfer here. Fingers crossed.
Yep. Liz Stratman. We'll see. That
Um,
need post help in a big way.
hmm,
Cassie Orsler can't play until the first semester's over.
so she won't be around till January.
Yeah.
So she won't be around till January then.
We're looking at a forward for the first half of the year next year. We're looking at redshirt freshman Courtney Wilkins and Netherlands freshman Myrta Shepper and freshman Brittany Morrison as our forwards.
Mm-hmm.
It's not many people.
Yeah, so I don't know, it's tough. What are your thoughts on Malone's transfer?
I'm surprised, and then I think about it, and I guess if you had told me someone from this team is going to transfer, who's your first guess? I probably would have gone with Malone. I have a Google Doc somewhere that has the information I want. If you had told me someone's going to transfer, who's it going to be? I would say Malone. I think Coach Jack is very well spoken and is very good to her team and supports them and knows how to, pick her battles when she wants to. You saw this year when everything was going right and Malone was rattling off 15 points and 12 rebounds a game. She was always great and complimenting everything. Entire second half of the season, you kind of heard it both in Coach Jack's voice and in Coach Judanis in kind of the after the post game blurbs with Sloan on the radio. You got the impression the coaching staff really didn't know what to do with Alexis Malone. They were confused. They had kind of lost at their wits' end about how to motivate her, how to not. So that wasn't necessarily a huge red flag for me at the time. I wasn't thinking, oh my goodness, this girl's gone. Looking back now, I bet this is connected. In Louisiana Tech, Malone is heading to UB's got a lot of connections to Louisiana Tech. Former UB assistant coach Courtney Brown, who probably recruited Alexis Malone, is there. She's Louisiana Tech's recruiting coordinator now. I believe that Coach Jack's other former assistant coach is also there. So her choice and destination is not altogether surprising. I'm still trying to pull up this spreadsheet that has the information I want. But Malone being gone sucks. Mackenzie Losing being done sucks. Rachel Gregory leaving without any notice also really sucks. That happened earlier in the year. But those are three players we're supposed to have this coming year. Mariah Suchin is the other forward that we have next year. So she at least got some minutes this year. But we're looking at a sophomore, a redshirt freshman, and two freshmen as our forward depth next year before Cassie Orsler can come back. Mm-hmm. So I almost guarantee you there's going to be a lineup where Lisa or Catherine Ups are playing at the – Catherine Ups might play at the 4 even. UB goes real small. It's going to be a very different looking team next year. And I think that Felicia Leggett Jack was a powerhouse forward when she played at Syracuse. But I think she's always been gearing for a guard-oriented team. You see it, the defense she chooses. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Women's basketball news has been a bit of a downer. I've got a couple hunches on some recruiters, some possible recruits. UB now has, let me double check on this. They have 2 spots to fill for next year. I don't know. It was definitely a bummer to have another. I mean, Mackenzie Loesting's thing is not a huge surprise. It's very sad. She's had 2 surgeries on that ankle already, and this will be a third. It's not a surprise that it's just too weak to function. It's sad. Malone's departure was a surprise. You sit back and think, and you can see the connections. I don't know. All of a sudden, Coach Jack has a really young team. If Liz Stratman doesn't transfer in, which it doesn't look like she is, it looks like I was in a bit of a red herring. Corinne Moss is the only senior next year. And Corinne Moss has shown that she can't really be consistent enough to start and play 25, 30 minutes a game. I think she hasn't shown that. I don't know what else you have, John.
Yeah. Well, now I'm good and depressed. I guess one of the last things we can end on a high note with men's tennis found out who they were playing in the NCAA tournament, and they're taking on Ohio State, and the people at the NCAA must be some kind of sick joke that all the UB teams have to go to Ohio and go to Columbus.
Yep.
It's some. I know on the award show today, Coach Nickel mentioned something about how the NCAA couldn't, schedule them to go to sunny California, but instead have to go to the hashtag worst state ever. He didn't say that. I added that in, but instead they have to go to Ohio, which I don't blame them. I've never been to California, but I assume it's nicer than Ohio is.
But when the women's team won the MAC championship in 2009, 2008, spring of 2008, they got to go to UCLA, which I lived for a year 2 miles away from UCLA, and it's a nice place to be. But they're going to Columbus. I cut you off a bit, John. What else did you have to say for that?
Yeah, I was more about to segue to you because I don't know too much about tennis. So.
All right, great. Well, yeah, men's tennis is playing Ohio State on Saturday, first round of the NCAA tournament. UB in women's tennis, men's basketball, women's soccer have now all gotten NCAA games as a team. Men's swimming won the conference. They didn't. You only advance to nationals in swimming on the basis of individual events. Football has obviously competed in 2 bowl games. They're not really NCAA events. It's a stupid system that does make sense, but it shouldn't. Anyway, UB has never gotten a win in the NCAA tournament. Going to be a really tall task for men's tennis as well. Ohio State's ranked number 12 in the country. They're quite good. They've won 10 straight Big Ten regular season championships. This year they shared it with Illinois. Illinois is ranked number 4 in the country. They were the only team to beat Ohio State in the regular season, and then they beat them. Illinois beat Ohio State in the Big Ten championship. So they're a very good team. I think they have 20 wins from 4 of their 6 single spots on the season. The only spot in any singles or doubles spot that doesn't have a winning record is second doubles, and they're 11-12 or 12-13 on the season. So it's going to be a tall order. I think it's the biggest. I think UB is a bigger underdog here than they were in women's soccer against Penn State, or than they were in men's basketball against West Virginia. They're a big underdog. I'd honestly be kind of surprised if they won 2 points, but hopefully they do win 2 points. Get a good showing. They've finally broken through. I feel much the same as I did with each of the other 2 teams this year. They finally broken through. Wins are great. I'm not going to be entirely upset if we don't get a win yet, because we're still at an era in the athletic department where making it to the NCAA postseason is a big deal in its own right. It's happened 3 times this year, and that doubles that doubles our team MAC championships, as John said at the start of the show. In terms of actually making it to the NCAA tournament, that had only happened once before this season in 16 years. Of course, that kind of hides that 3 of our postseason appearances weren't NCAA tournaments. But tennis is going to Ohio State. Should they win, they'll play the winner of Notre Dame and Vanderbilt, I think. I don't remember. John and I made fun of someone else offline for getting that wrong. I've forgotten myself. I think it's Notre Dame and Vanderbilt. I honestly don't think it'll be relevant, honestly. I hope the men's tennis has a strong showing. They're serious underdogs. But it's still the NCAA tournament, and it's still the 3rd time that we've done it this year. So that's pretty exciting. John, I have one more thing to say, but if you have anything else, this is your chance.
Yeah, so you mentioned earlier, my little Avengers post, which I had unwittingly posted it on National Superhero Day. So I think from the poll result, I am going to probably start doing this as a full series over the summer, maybe one a week, maybe one every other week. We'll see, what's coming out. And just want to have this as a notice if you think there is a movie I should do, or there's some storyline or something that's well connected to UB Athletics and I can make a parallel to it. Just shoot me a message or shoot the Bull Run Twitter account a message on Twitter and let me know, and I'll take opening that up to ideas from anyone watching it in the community.
All right. Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised by that post. When I first thought of the idea, I didn't think it was going to turn out as well as it did. So I'm excited to see more things. It's definitely something fun that can carry us through the summer. I do want to say I was able to look it up while we were talking, and men's track and field has dropped back down to number 2 in the Northeast, below Cornell. That sucks. I think if we went head to head, we could beat them, but whatever. Women's track and field is staying at number 6 in the Northeast, and there are new rankings due out tomorrow. So we'll tell you about them a week from now when there will once again be new rankings out. Last thing that I have to say is we started out the show talking about the blue and white awards and the kind of UB Athletics internal awards. John and I have been working and arguing, and we still have some arguing to do. We are this on the heels of our first ever season making sure that we cover all UB sports, every competition, and doing it in a timely manner versus kind of once monthly roundups. We're starting the Bull Run Awards this year. If we had known that the Blue and White Club was going to do their own awards, we might have had a different timeline. But those are going to wait until everyone is done, which will probably mean June 13th, after John Jones competes in the national championships for outdoor track and field. Mike Morgan will probably be there too. Ryan Billion should be there. Hopefully someone else will too. But we're going to wait until everyone's done, and then we'll unveil them over a week in June. But just to let you know, keep an eye out, start getting excited. Maybe don't get excited. They're not that excited. We've got a series of posts coming where we have Team of the Year, Coach of the Year, all the things that you'd expect, where we recap this season. We still got a few more weeks before that. Every Sunday night, John and I talk UB Athletics, live stream it here. Thanks to the 2 viewers who are watching right now. Thanks in the future, my future, your present, to the viewers who are watching it, for you now, for me in the future, on replay. And once again, every Sunday night at 10:30, we'll do this. We'll do it through the summer, even when there's less to talk about. We might talk CFL football. We might talk Bulls and pro baseball. We might just talk about something UB related for a bit. They'll probably won't be an hour long in the summer, but we're going to do this regularly. If John can't join me, I'll do it alone. Once again, every Sunday at 10:30. I'm Matt Gritzmacher. I'm joined by John McWinney. We're from ubbullrun.com. Have a great week.